Hey guys, it's Danny. Alrighty, a while back I made a video with what I believe to be some overrated orchids. And today we're gonna do the opposite thing. We're gonna talk about orchids that I just find underrated. Now, whether people don't talk about them a lot, or they don't have them in their collection, or stores or flower shops don't make these orchids more available to us, more frequent, it just seems to me like these orchids are kind of lacking from the scene. Some of these orchids I talked maybe a lot about in the past, but I will exclude myself from the equation. So I have a little list here with 5 orchids that I truly believe are underrated for what they offer. I would like to see more of them being available on the market. I believe many people will like them, but of course, like with the other video, this is my personal opinion and preference. And if you don't have the same preference as me, that's perfect. We're not all clones of each other. Therefore, if you want to make a different list, you have other orchids you consider underrated, just leave us a comment down below. I'm sure everybody is curious to know and learn what orchids are available out there. So with that said, let's start with the first orchid, one of my favorites actually, the Miltonidium Pupukea Sunset, which is currently classified as Oncidium. However, though, many stores still keep the old name. Now, this is an orchid I had a lot of years ago. Through some sort of luck, I found a few at my local grocery shop. Can you believe that? So I purchased them. I didn't know anything about them, but they actually did very well. And you'll have some images on the screen right now from when they were in bloom. These orchids are pretty similar to the Oncidium Twinkle. They actually get confused a lot, but they're very, very different. First of all, the Oncidium Pupukea is a lot bigger than the Twinkle. The pseudobulbs, leaves, and other structures do tend to grow a lot bigger than the Twinkles, and also the flowers are bigger. And to me, they don't really look alike, but I can see why people confuse them. They produce a wonderful spray of flowers that, from a distance, looks like a twinkle. It smells kind of like a twinkle, but if you get closer, you'll see it's a different thing. Shape-wise, it's different as well, but the most interesting thing about this orchid is the fragrance. Now, I did not have this orchid in bloom at the same time as when I had my Twinkle, but the fragrances are really similar. I would not call them identical. I need to wait for my current Pupukeas to bloom to tell, but I remember when I first sensed the fragrance of this orchid, I was blown away. It's a very heavy fragrance, very sweet, but if I remember correctly, it is a lot more refined than the fragrance of the Twinkle, which smells pretty much like sugar, sweet syrup, something of the sorts. To me, the Pupukea smells much heavier, much more sophisticated, if that's even a thing. So maybe it's just in my mind, but I find that the Pupukea is a great orchid, a great Twinkle replacement if you want something a little bigger. Fragrance-wise, they're pretty similar to me. But look at that display. I'm not saying the Twinkle is not pretty, but the Pupukea, oh my goodness. Now, there are a few variations. Some are completely yellow, while others have a little bit of a rosy blush on their lip. The ones that I currently have are not the same that I used to have 5 or 4 years ago. Those ones I lost. I actually tested them, they had a virus. So slowly but surely they kind of depleted themselves. And I was on the lookout ever since, and these come from Catasetum too. I purchased them maybe at the beginning of the year. One of them is completely yellow, the other one has that rosy blush, and I cannot wait for them to bloom. They didn't have the greatest root system, so I'm not sure when they're gonna bloom, but I cannot wait to sense that fragrance once again. Okay, the second underrated orchid is actually an entire group of orchids. It's the Bellaras. You might already know I have a soft spot for Bellaras, but just because I talk about them a lot doesn't really mean they're just so popular. I personally see more Odontoglossum hybrids on the market, stuff like Wilsonaras and Colmenaras and stuff of the sorts. And yes, I'm calling them by their older names because everything is Oncidium nowadays. The Bellaras are Alisaras, but Alisaras can also be Miltasias. Now, if you're a beginner, nothing I just said made sense. Don't worry about it. Take things slow because this is really confusing for us as well. I just prefer to stick to the older names, but I am well aware that they have been reclassified, most of them to Oncidiums. Don't worry, I am up to date. I just refuse to call them like that. So I feel like I see, even in videos, even in flower shops, stuff like Wilsonaras and other intergenerics more than the Bellaras. And it's a shame because Bellaras are easier to grow, in my opinion, than Wilsonaras and all the Odontoglossum hybrids bunch. Those are more cooler growing, these are more warmer growing, and I feel like the vast majority of us, at least here on my channel, grow our orchids in a home, which tends to be rather warm, rather dry, not the perfect environment for a odontoglossum hybrid. That guy does a little better in a greenhouse in which you can maintain humidity, you can maintain lower temperatures. Therefore, Bellaras, for me at least, have always been easier to grow. And there are a few that you can find on the market, but one or two. When it comes to stuff like the Diana Dunn, which is in spike right now, it's pretty hard to find. Ever since you guys saw it in my videos, I think one or two of you guys found it and let me know that you finally found it in the flower shop. How about the Marfit's Dream? How about the beautiful no ID one that I had 5 years ago and I lost? Oh yes, it was a Bellara. And if you guys don't know the story, I think this is a Bellara which was a glitch. It doesn't look like anything. I suspect it's a Bellara due to my experience with them, but I used to have this really beautiful white looking one, and it was so ruffled that it really didn't look like the Winter Wonderland or other white-ish Bellaras. It was a beautiful, beautiful thing. The problem was I was just at the beginning of my journey with orchids, and back then I was on this forum and everybody kept propagating this idea that you should not really wash orchid roots at the sink with chlorine because you're gonna kill the beneficial bacteria, and you also need to keep some of the older medium and put it in the new medium and do all of these things not to disturb the balance. Well, with the years, I discovered that that was a very bad thing to do because there came the snails. And until I figured out the whole hydrogen peroxide solution, I tried everything with the snails, even vegetables, even coffee, even tobacco. I don't remember, but I tried a lot of things. And I had this Bellara trying to recover and produce new roots right in the center of my snail infestation, and I lost it because the snails kept coming back and eating her roots. And at some point, she got totally depleted and I lost her, and I didn't find her since. But overall, I feel like Bellaras are not very well represented in flower shops. Do you feel the same? Is it just my impression because I like them so much? And I just feel like for home growing, Bellaras are a lot more suited and more forgiving. Another orchid which I sadly don't have anymore, it's an Oncidium. It's the Oncidium Catherines Oak. It used to be called the Miltonidium, now it's an Oncidium. I had this orchid again in the time that I had my Pupukeas. I actually purchased them at the same time. I was just very lucky. But the Catherines Oak is a totally different thing. It's an Oncidium-like orchid which produces, and I'm not even joking, 4 flower spikes per pseudobulb. It is also very fragrant as well. Again, it smells a little bit like the Pupukeas. It has that sweet, heavy fragrance, at least to my nose. The flowers though are really pretty, and that particular orchid doesn't have this tendency to branch out like the Pupukea. But it's okay because the flowers and the display nonetheless are very pretty. Now the Catherines Oak, I used to have that one. I lost it at some point, but I don't remember why. Then I purchased it 2 years ago. I found it here at a grocery shop, which closed ever since. And that one had an issue. It just didn't want to grow anything. Although the Catherines Oak is actually a very vigorous orchid, and it withstood my beginner times with orchids. So yeah, the one that I found around here sadly didn't make it, and I could not find it ever since. Most probably I will have to go to a nursery or actually order it online from a nursery. Of course it appears from time to time in flower shops or even in nurseries, but I just don't see it very often, and I also don't see a lot of people talking about it. And for an orchid that can produce 4 flower spikes at once per pseudobulb, well, that's quite an accomplishment for a little hybrid, isn't it? If you don't know about the existence of this orchid, I do think that if you're the right person at the right time, you will find it in flower shops. And if you ever see it, I totally recommend it. It's just easy to grow, it's not as fussy, doesn't really need all that much humidity and low temperatures and so on. And if you have this orchid and when it blooms it starts to shrivel a little bit, even though it has a good root system, don't worry, it tends to do that. It kind of overblooms a little bit, but never goes overboard. If you see it going overboard, obviously cut the flower spikes. But just as an idea, the Catherines Oak is a floriferous hybrid, very vigorous hybrid, which I wish I could see more so I can purchase it. But here we have it. I love it just as much as the Pupukeas. Fourth orchid that I consider underrated is a Phalaenopsis. I don't know why I called it like that. It's the Phalaenopsis Ariana. How many of you have it? How many of you know it? It is actually a very similar Phalaenopsis to the Schilleriana. When it comes to the modeling, it has beautiful mottled leaves. The problem with it and why I feel it's not so popular as the Schilleriana is the non-fragrance situation. Typically, the Stuartiana has white blooms. Again, maybe something not everybody likes, but the shape of them is really, really nice and interesting. But there's also a yellow variety, which is really beautiful, and I've seen it for sale, I think at Orchid Garden. I think that's where I saw it. I wanted to purchase it, but decided, you know what, maybe not now. In the past, I did have a Stuartiana, or at least a Stuartiana hybrid. It had beautiful leaves. In the end, I lost it to spider mites. Yeah, the other pest that I battled with a lot. And I didn't find it for sale ever since, although my first one was purchased from the flower shop. From time to time, you can actually find these things in flower shops or garden centers, just very rarely. It's not a very rare orchid though. I see nurseries having it available pretty often, so I don't consider it underrated from this point of view, but I don't see a lot of people actually displaying it or making videos about it. I see more people talking about Schillerianas, me included, because it's a little fragrant, it has pinky blooms, but really the Stuartiana is nothing to ignore. The leaf patterning is beautiful. I consider it to be just, let's say, as easy to grow or fussy as the Schilleriana. To me, they're very similar. But if you're not a fan of just white flowers, look for the yellow version. It's quite pretty. I find it quite wild. Display wise though, maybe the Schilleriana will bloom a little bit more bitter and more flashy than the Stuartiana, but definitely do check the Stuartiana as well. And for my last pick, actually, it is an orchid that I don't have. Sadly, it's been on my wish list for quite a long time and I just didn't see it for sale. Or if I did, it was a seedling. I'm not into seedlings, especially because it's a Vanda. I didn't tell you what it is. It's the Wrinkle Stylus Retusa or Retusha. I don't know why I feel like calling it Retusha. Maybe it's Retusa. Now, if you Google her name, you'll find pictures with her and probably you'll see why I think it's just so underrated. I don't see many people talking about it or making videos about it, and I don't even see it for sale all that often. I do see a lot of the Lawrenceae or the one that I bought, the Huleshiana, which are all beautiful and nice and smell nice. But did you see how the Retusa looks like? She has these really long pendant, beautiful inflorescences. It's just so hard to imagine having something like that in front of me. Oh my goodness. And the flowers are supposed to be fragrant as well, but at this point I don't care. Look at that display. Am I wrong? Do you guys find this orchid available at nurseries very often and you just choose not to buy it? I don't know. Let me know down below because this is a mystery for me. How can this beautiful, beautiful orchid be so poorly represented, at least here in Europe as far as I know? And how come I don't see you guys talk about it? But this is the #1 orchid on my wish list for a while now. I just cannot seem to find it. I hope I will find it pretty soon because that display, having it in my grow space, I think it would be heavenly. Do you guys like this orchid or is it just me? Maybe the whole display is not really that appealing. Am I just weird? I don't know. Let me know down below in the comment section. So these were my top 5 picks. Of course, I think there are other orchids which are slightly underrated maybe, but not as much as these ones at least. So I hope that if you didn't know about these orchids, at least you're gonna Google them, check them out, see if it's something you would enjoy. I personally believe you will enjoy them. Can't say anything about the Retusa, but the other ones, I do believe you'll like them. And of course, if you have other orchids to add to the list, leave me a comment down below in the description because everyone likes to know what other beautiful orchids are there. So alrighty guys, you know the drill. Like or dislike this video below. Subscribe to my channel for regular orchid videos, tutorials, tops of the sorts and other orchid related topics. Turn on notifications so you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. And if you're curious to know what I use on a regular basis in my grow space, media, pots, fertilizer, just expand the description. Everything is listed down below. And with that said, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye!